It's Friday, May 29th, 2026. We've got a Friday 5-pack of news stories and Ask or Tell Me Anything next on the AM Update. Thank you for hanging out again with me on the AM Update this week. Hopefully, I provided a service for you, getting up to date on the day's news as you start your day. Of course, on Fridays, that is a Friday 5-pack of news stories, as well as Ask or Tell Me Anything. It's your chance to ask me any question, tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Let's start yesterday at the Air Force Academy. Vice President J.D. Vance spoke there at their version of commencement, and he discussed his big fear in the new age of artificial intelligence when it comes to the military.
But your fellow Americans are understandably, they're worried about AI, about how it will affect the labor market, how it will distribute resources, and how it has fundamentally changed how we interact with one another, our social lives. But the thing I worry about most with AI is how it will change warfare. Now, Pope Leo XIV, in a recent document, encouraged us as human beings not to outsource the most important moral decisions to digital technology. And I want to endorse that sentiment and make it more specific to each and every one of you. AI will inevitably change warfare. And of course, as you've learned over the last 4 years, it already has. But one of the things that makes Americans unique, that makes you as warfighters unique, is that we wage war justly. But when I say that we, all of us, wage war justly, I mean fundamentally that you must do so. Because you are the ones who execute. You are the ones who lead on the battlefield. You are the ones who ensure that our lethality in war, which is amazing and necessary, it also coexists with our heart and with our conscience. It is an incredible burden to put on your shoulders, but it is one that we entrust to you with full confidence. And if the warfare of the future is to live up to the moral values of our ancestors, decisions over life and death must be made by humans and not machines.
Vice President J.D. Vance at the Air Force Academy discussing the rise of AI and his worries about the future of warfare. And he invoked just war theory there. And that is the Christian theory about whether warfare, a particular war, is justified or not. And he is correct in saying that in our tradition, in the West's tradition of warfare, it has to be a just war. It has to be justified. And he worries that in the future with AI, that it's going to be the machines making these decisions about morality and not humans. And he's absolutely right there. And that is one of the unique things about the Western tradition. And it is shrinking, that we don't just wage war for the sake of waging war. There is always a reasonable justification. Most of the time. Maybe you would say Iraq, Afghanistan notwithstanding, which at the time, from what we knew, those seemed like very reasonable justifications for going into those countries. Maybe we found out in hindsight, not so much. There are different perspectives on that. But we go into war, not just fighting for the uniforms, not just fighting because good old US of A is good old US of A. No, we fight ultimately not just for the destruction of another civilization, but for the flourishing of humanity and the prosperity of humanity ultimately, even if destruction has to be used to those ends. So those are some interesting remarks there from our vice president coming yesterday. Let's go to this. A Texas man is accused of threatening to kill Erika Kirk and bomb a Turning Point USA event. He's been charged with third-degree felony count for making a terroristic threat. 26-year-old Jacob Wenske allegedly wrote a disturbing series of online posts and emails, including saying he knows exactly where to bomb after an upcoming TPUSA event was announced in San Antonio. Authorities say he later escalated the threats, allegedly writing, quote, "Death to Erika Kirk and every single speaker there," while threatening a bombing at, quote, "every single Turning Point rally and event." The summit is scheduled for June 5th through the 7th at the San Antonio Marriott River Center and is expected to draw 2,500 attendees. TPUSA says security at the event will include enhanced multi-layered protection with private security and local police following the threats. This woman, that organization cannot catch a break. They just can't. And you know why there are specific threats towards Erika herself. You know the reason why. You know the why. It's Candice Owens. It's her merry band of absolute degenerate, soulless grifters who have just posited theory after theory after theory, claiming that she had some role to play in the tragic, heinous martyrdom of her husband. I saw another account yesterday, an account that has a profile picture featuring Charlie Kirk. Can't even remember the name of it. Some fat slob runs this. He's on video all the time. Some fat slob, I think from Tennessee, runs this account. Just making up fiction about how Erika Kirk was seen getting handsy with a new man or something. And it's got impressions out the wazoo, interactions out the wazoo. Just despicable stuff. Speaking of despicable, but kind of in a cartoonish way, let's go to the land down under. The voices you're about to hear are that of a sex discrimination therapist, I believe, or something like that. Let me look up the exact title. Dr. Anna Cody, who is a sex discrimination commissioner in Australia, and an Australian senator as well, on the new issue of whether or not potential pregnancy for men is something that has to do with discrimination law. Listen to this exchange between this senator from Australia and this sex discrimination counselor person, whatever.
I'm very confused.
So this is the voice of the senator.
A biological male can't become pregnant.
But the grounds of pregnancy includes potential pregnancy as well as pregnancy.
But if they can't become pregnant, how can you then become potentially pregnant?
It's about the unlawful treatment by the employer. If someone is treated unfairly on the basis of pregnancy or potential pregnancy, then that is unlawful discrimination on the basis of pregnancy.
So if a bloke came in and they said, "Are you going to have children?" which is the same question really, and he said, "Oh, yeah, maybe," are you saying that he could also claim that ground?
If he didn't receive the job because...
But they can't get pregnant?
No, not a man who is seeking a position, then it's not going to apply to a man.
Well, they're both biological men. It makes no sense. A biological man, you stated before, a biological man can't get pregnant. Am I correct? Because if I'm not, I've got to go back to school. I seriously do. Because I missed that lesson in biology. I went to a convent school. The nuns may not have told me about it. But you said a biological man can't get pregnant.
That's correct, Senator. But someone who is a trans woman may be assumed to be pregnant or to be able to be pregnant.
So what stops a man putting on a dress, walking in and claiming the protections? He's now a woman. You've admitted that.
That is an exchange that you just listened to in the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Legislation Committee in Australia. Clip courtesy of Sky News. An exchange between an Australian senator and a sex discrimination commissioner for the Australian Human Rights Commission, claiming that as long as a dude wears a dress to a job interview, he is covered under the same anti-discrimination statutes that a woman who, like an actual woman who might get pregnant, would be covered by, as long as he wears a dress. Because he could be assumed, because he looks like a woman, he's wearing a dress, he could assume to be potentially pregnant. So therefore, he's covered under the same statutes that actually protect women from employment discrimination. I just... absolute, unabated madness. Pray. E. Jean Carroll, co-founder of multiple hookup sites, whom Ellie fired as a columnist in 2020, has accused numerous men of sexual abuse decades after the alleged incident supposedly happened. Other allegations didn't go much further than the pages of her imaginative tell-alls. Carroll's allegations against President Trump ended up centering on a pair of civil lawsuits, one of which she alleged that Trump sexually abused her in the Bergdorf Goodman department store in Manhattan back in the 1990s. Other which she alleged defamation over Trump's denial that the incident happened. Carroll's legal offensive ultimately left the president on the hook for $83.3 million awarded by a jury. Now, she might have to go back on the defense. The Department of Justice has launched a criminal investigation into Carroll. It's according to multiple sources talking to the CNN and the New York Times. Investigators are reportedly looking into whether the fired columnist committed perjury in testimony linked to her lawsuits against Trump. The probe reportedly focuses on Carroll's assertion in a 2022 deposition statement that she received no outside funding for her lawsuit, which is later shown to be demonstrably false. Who could have seen that coming? I remember where I was when I heard that the jury had awarded E. Jean Carroll, a woman with a long track record of making up probably fictitious stories about sexual abuse perpetrated against her. I remember where I was sitting in the car in front of one of the lines of shops at Jordan Creek Mall in West Des Moines. I heard it come across the radio, or maybe I saw it on X, that a jury had awarded her $83.3 million, I believe, in the defamation suit against Trump. And now we're learning the Department of Justice. I'm seeing this as well. I'm seeing this take on this story as well. This is just brazen corruption from the Department of Justice. Obviously, Trump told them to look into this. I don't care. I kind of don't care at this point. Number one, probably shouldn't have tried to kill the guy, shoot the guy, wage lawfare against the guy. And number two, if she really did lie under sworn oath, doesn't she need to be held accountable for that? E. Jean Carroll, hopefully she's never going to see a red cent of that judgment. Little show and tell for a final story on the Friday 5-pack. I mean, I love watching police do their work. Big fan of the show On Patrol Live. That's one of the most popular digital linear programs out there right now. Watch it as often as I possibly can, live on Friday and Saturday nights. However, and you get an idea for just how much law enforcement is the cartilage in the knee between order and chaos in this country, in all pockets of this country, whenever you watch police work. The thing with police, though, is that they're humans. They make mistakes. Once you start to learn a little bit more about their training, you understand that they are trained to be in total control of the situation at all times. Not all cops are angels. In fact, there are a lot of bad cops as well. People who should not be police officers as well. Now, I don't think this is that dramatic, but I do think this is a little bit interesting on a couple of different levels. This is in Palm Beach County, Florida. The sheriff's office was running an enforcement campaign for distracted driving, so texting while driving. This traffic stop, I do not think went according to plan for this officer. Watch this.
It doesn't bother you, huh? Yeah, a lot of times you can.
Maybe it's different because I'm a girl.
Hello, ma'am. Hey, good morning. I'm Deputy Gasala with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Recently, you're being pulled over. The city of Lake Worth today, we're doing an operation for distracted driver, and you drove past me holding the phone with your right hand, manipulating that phone. I mean, I saw.
For those of you listening, the woman pulled over for supposedly manipulating a phone with her right hand does not actually have a right hand. She's got a stub.
So obviously not. So you want to just call this a day? Or?
I don't want to call it a day. You had a hand up manipulating the phone.
You just said my right hand.
Well, I thought I told you your right hand. You
so
had a
you
hand
didn't.
up. The right hand. I saw you manipulate.
So you didn't.
with the right hand, perhaps not, right? But
you didn't see me with my right hand.
Okay, so are you
saying that you saw me with my right hand?
I know what I just said. I know what I just said. I'm asking you now. Did you or not have your phone on your hand?
I did not.
You did not have your phone in your hand?
I did not.
Hand to God, you didn't have your phone in your hand?
Hand to God.
The other hand to God, you don't have your phone in your hand?
Hand to God.
Cool. You have your driver's license, registration?
Now, that woman is some sort of influencer as well. And I love that. Just keeps showing him her stub. I don't have a right hand. How could I be manipulating the cell phone with my right hand? What is interesting, though, from a police work standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, they're trained to really pretty much be in control of the situation at all times. And you can see good police officers are very cordial, very polite, likable even, while being in control. Some police officers are total douchebags, and that's whatever they have to do to maintain control of different situations. You could tell, though, that this officer didn't really know what to do, because before you could get 3 sentences out of his mouth on this traffic stop, she had already basically blown his credibility. And maybe he just made a mistake. He just made a mistake. She put videos up, as far as I'm aware, later, showing she literally cannot hold a phone with her stub. She can't. She doesn't have a right hand. And it's just interesting to see that officer, instead of going, you know what, I obviously made a mistake here, be on your way. Instead of doing that, he was like, oh no, oh crap, I got to maintain control here. I don't know what to do. And so he kind of doubles down. What didn't help, though, is that woman, as funny as she is, she was not super respectful. And so that kind of, I think, added to the officer's chagrin. As I understand, the woman was actually still issued a citation, but that citation was thrown out this week for lack of evidence, just like she lacks a right hand. When we come back, we'll do a little Ask or Tell Me Anything. It's coming up next. Let's go back to Australia, double dipping on the land down under. Dylan is our first up on Ask or Tell Me Anything. You should get caught up on the Giggle versus Tickle debacle happening in Australia right now. The beautiful irony is that our first woman prime minister changed the laws that would have prevented it. So I did a little bit of cursory research on this. This is I believe, a lawsuit against an app, like a dating app or a woman's app called, is it Giggle? Is Giggle? Giggle versus Tickle is, let's see, is Giggle, the legality, Giggle, a social media app for women. And they apparently would not let real men on. So it's a lawsuit regarding the legality of the membership policies used on Giggle, which included dudes who feel pretty. That's a real lawsuit happening now in Australia, which, given what we just heard from in that clip we played during the Friday 5-pack, not a surprise that this is happening in Australia. It wouldn't be a surprise if it happened in America either. So I'm not putting Australia down for that. But it is ironic, as Dylan points out. Australia, first female prime minister, changed the laws that would have prevented the legality or even having this legal case to begin with. So the first prime minister paving the way for men to invade a women's only social media app. Ironic indeed. Let's go to Light the Dark, California. Story from CBS. A routine call turns heroic as Rancho Cordova deputy helps deliver baby in store parking lot. What started as a suspicious circumstance call for Rancho Cordova police ended with a newborn surprise. Deputy Foster Tracy said, quote, "It was 0 to 100 really fast. It was one of those calls you go run of the mill. This was definitely not something that I was prepared for at any part of the day. A routine call for Rancho Cordova police became a race to save a newborn's life." Tracy, the deputy, continued, said, I didn't really register at first. What do you do? Excuse me? She said, I'm having a baby. I've been out here for hours screaming for help and nobody would call me or help me. Tracy called for medical backup and got to work. She lifts up her dress and the baby is halfway out. She said she's been there for hours. His partner arrived moments later. In between two bushes with only a blanket for comfort, concerns set in fast. The deputies saw the umbilical cord wrapped around the baby's neck. Tracy said, this is the deputy, I was concerned the baby was deceased because it was purple and blue. Saw the umbilical cord, did the best we could with our experience. And that experience paid off. The baby and mom are safe. Nearby, the store's owners, shocked to learn a baby was born in their parking lot, were relieved to hear they're safe. The deputy said her heart was pumping the whole time, checking on mom and baby. At last check, mom and baby are all right. The deputies are credited with those life-saving measures. That is an amazing story. And this is another instance of why I enjoy watching police work so much. You get some of the best of humanity, some of the worst of humanity. You get some of the best police work, some of the more questionable police work. You get the human aspect of those police kind of being that cartilage in the knee between chaos and order on one call. And then the next call, they're helping deliver a baby or doing something amazing to people. And not in this case, I'm not talking about, but people they don't even know. It's amazing. So that is a great story. Thank you, Light the Dark, California, for that story. Let's go to this one. James says the White House is going to do more to honor Harambe this year than they will Pride Month, and it's wonderful. Here's the post from the White House about the 10-year anniversary of the death of Harambe the gorilla. Today, we remember a legend. This is from the official White House account. Today, we remember a legend. On this day in history, Harambe would have celebrated another birthday, an icon that became a part of internet history, American culture, and an entire generation's timeline. Tomorrow marks 10 years since we lost him, 10 years since the moment the world stopped scrolling and collectively mourned something bigger than a meme. He became a symbol of loyalty, strength, chaos, unity, and the strange beauty of the internet, bringing millions of people together for one cause, never forgetting Harambe. Everyone remembers where they were when they heard the news, and somehow, a decade later, his legacy still lives on, gone but not forgotten. Rest easy to a true patriot. May 27th, 1999 to May 28th, 2016, forever in our hearts. That is the in remembrance post from the official White House account of Harambe the gorilla, who passed away 10 years ago this week. And James pointing out the deliciousness of the fact that the White House is going to do more to honor that gorilla than they will Pride Month, hopefully. Let's go to this. Dr. Griffin has a question about demand destruction. What gas price do you think would be necessary to reduce U.S. gasoline demand by 20%? Supposedly, supply is down by 20% because of the strait. Thanks for updating us on your bike plan. You're welcome. Hoping to take my bike. What's ironic though? Part of my motivation for taking my bike, the 36-mile round trip commute into work, saving $5, a day on gas, something like that. Given current prices. What I quickly learned the other day, I'm going to more than make up for that saved money on gas with fuel for myself. Because it does take a lot of energy, a lot of human energy to get that done. What gas price do you think would be necessary to reduce U.S. gasoline demand by 20%? I don't know. Spitballing $5, $6 a gallon. I think that's when you'll really start to see some true consumer demand destruction. And some true destruction of the economy, like true permanent destruction of the economy. Because still, I have to think the vast majority of people depend on their cars to do their 20, 30-minute, 40-minute, 50-minute commute into and out of work. The vast majority of people who are contributing members of our economy still rely on that. And I think $5 or $6 a gallon, that's when you're really getting into a phase where people just cannot do that. They just can't abide. Let's go to this from Jim. Michigan refuses to cooperate with the feds with respect to SNAP data, welfare data. This is from Michigan Capital Confidential. Headline, Michigan refuses to share food stamp data with feds. Could cost taxpayers $300 million. Story says if the state of Michigan shared data from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program with the federal government, it could save state taxpayers around $300 million come fiscal year 2028. but it won't share the data or explain why. 28 states and the territory of Guam are sharing SNAP data with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the federal agency says it already has found about $3 billion worth of fraud and abuse across the states that submitted the data. Department of Agriculture's SNAP Integrity Team analyzes data provided by states and scrubs all available information to end indiscriminate welfare fraud. The Michigan's problem is twofold. The state struggles to disperse benefits accurately, and criminals loot the program yearly. In 2025, the state reported $7.7 million of SNAP fraud, down from $14 million in 2024. From 23 to 24, SNAP fraud in Michigan jumped by nearly 400%. The state's high payment error rate of 9.53% could cost taxpayers as much as $300 million starting in fiscal year 2028, but the state is not participating in the federal effort to fix these problems. That story again from Michigan Capital Confidential. So there's a pretty easy explanation for this. The states that voluntarily gave their welfare benefits, their SNAP data, to the feds, those are the states who are willing to participate and say, hey, we might have some problems here. We want to get them solved, though. That might be a little bit embarrassing for us, but we want to get them. Those are the states that are at least in territories that are at least trying to be on the up and up. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture said they found north of $3 billion in the states that are actually trying to do it right now. They're trying to be on the up and up now. $3 billion. Michigan says, according to data they post themselves that I just read for you in the story, they admit to an error rate of 9.53% or a fraud rate of 9.53%. That's a really high fraud rate. Really high fraud rate. Which tells you the fact that they will not participate in the Fed's efforts to clean this up tells you that the fraud rate probably isn't even 9.53%. It's probably a lot higher. And the money that's being pilfered from the taxpayers, probably a lot more. If the numbers they're telling you are already that bad and they won't participate in the Fed's effort to clean this up, it tells you that the real number, the real fraud rate, is a lot worse than that. One question. Actually, we'll take a couple of questions. DR Griffin, again, has another question. When's it too late to respond to requests for Ask or Tell Me Anything? What happens to late entries, i.e., are they considered for future weeks? Twofold. The deadline for entry into Ask or Tell Me Anything is whenever I start recording that segment. So that varies. So I can't tell you a definitive deadline. As far as late entries, I need to do a better job at this because sometimes there are some really good late entries and I forget all about them. So if you have a question that was not answered, I will try to do a better job of flagging those, liking those, bookmarking those to come back to. If I don't come back to them, by all means, ask them again. I know that's more effort on your end, and you're already making effort to listen or watch this, but I'll try to do a better job at that. Tiny Johnny asks, what do you think is the best habit men should establish in their youth? My first thought was reading. Curious what you'd say. That's a really good one. Something that I need to be better about. I would also say something, and I'm probably telling on myself as well. One of the reasons, again, not to bring this up for a third or fourth time this week, the reason why I wanted to take advantage of the trails around central Iowa, maybe riding my bike into work, even though that's an audacious goal to ride 36 miles, which I did successfully on the first attempt, is that I'm now approaching my mid-30s and I work a really sedentary job. And I think I'm maybe in a little bit better shape than I gave myself credit for, but I still really need to take staying in shape physically, cardiovascular health. I need to take that more seriously. I need to lift weights as well. I think if I could give one piece of habit advice for young men establishing in their youth, it would be physical fitness. And don't stop when you get to college, because that was my problem. I played football, and I was pretty active outside all 4 years of high school. If I had to do it all over again, I might have maybe pursued some sort of sports in college. I was not that good at sports either, but it doesn't really matter when you go to a small Christian college. They'll find something for you to do. They will. But I would have maybe done more sports. The problem is that I hated conditioning in high school. I hated it, which tells you that I needed it. I very much needed it. So I think with the prevalence of sedentary office jobs like mine, I think it's really easy for men to get into a rut with staying in shape. I'm trying to do a better job at that. Hopefully I'll make this permanent. But I think that's one thing. And I think, especially for certain sects of young men who are maybe more prone to the indoor pursuits, video games, maybe programming, things like that, things that are actually constructive even. I think, again, with the prevalence of those types of pursuits, it can be really easy to just, hey, I'm comfortable inside in air conditioning all the time. What's wrong with this? And I think not having that motor running the way that we were designed, like biologically designed, not peaking that motor as much as you can. I think there's just something where you're tinkering with the way that God made you as a man that is detrimental overall to your health, spiritually as well. So I think there's a lot of things that can fall in line. Reading might be one of those things once you get the physical conditioning and strengthening, once you get that in line. So good question. That's going to do it for another week of programming on the AM Update. Thank you so much for watching, listening, whatever or wherever you are. If you would think of it, if you can get the podcast on Spotify and iTunes, I think we had all of the episodes that I did this week actually ended up on those platforms. If you think of it, can you give me a 5-star review if you dig what I'm doing, and tell your friends about it as well. Share the episodes when I post them online. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a wonderful weekend. Back at it again on Monday.